Welcome back, everybody, to the Men of the Kingdom podcast. My name is Kyle. This is my co-host, Aaron. And before we introduce our other guests, I just want to welcome you back to your channel, or to our channel, if you are a returning visitor. And if you're new here, the purpose of our channel is very simple. We want to help men live successful life according to God's will. And guys, I know I say every episode that I'm excited for this episode, but I am genuinely excited for this because I have two of the most important people in my life sitting right next to me. And you're probably wondering, why do we have this guest, Sammy Pavette? And I would like to tell you, but I don't want to tell you. I want to let Aaron say it because he's got some big news to share. So, breaking news, exclusive. You've heard it here first. You actually know before a lot of people in their lives. Aaron, why don't you share why Sammy is on the show and who she is?
Well, thank you for that nice, warm welcome. If you're a loyal visitor, I just want to say, well, I'll say this. If you're a family member, I apologize for not telling you if this is how you found out. Nothing personal. It's just been a busy week, but Sammy and I were really fortunate that over the 4th of July, I asked her to marry me, and she even said yes.
I was surprised, too. I know what you're saying on the other side there. No.
So, we don't have the ring to prove it. Unfortunately, it's getting resized, but fortunately, it was big enough to fit on her finger, so this is my fiancé.
Yeah, you've probably heard us mention Sammy on the show probably a few times. We actually interviewed Greg, her father, on a previous episode. Make sure you check that out. Really good dude. But I want to kick the mic over to Sammy real quick. And why don't you take us to the beginning? This is where I want to start. I know there's a lot of single people probably watching this. And you guys you're my age. Aaron's a little bit older. And I just kind of want to take it back to the beginning and start off with, kind of introduce yourself. But how did you and Aaron even meet? And then we'll kind of work our way through here, how we're even sitting at this table together. So take your time with this, introduce yourself, and how you and Aaron even met.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Sammy. Aaron and I we have been dating for almost 2 years. We met a couple years ago at a friend's wedding. Well, technically, we knew each other way before that, but we didn't talk to each other at all. So it took driving down to a wedding in Iowa for us to get in the same car together and some people bailing out. It was God, right?
Yeah.
So
Please go into that because I think that's important because I think usually when people look back at situations, they're like, shoot, well, looking back, it's pretty obvious. Like, man, that worked out like you said, a God thing. Like, what are the odds of that? So go into details on that story because I think this is a very interesting thing for people to hear. When you said people bailing out, what do you mean by that?
yeah, so Aaron and I were working until a normal time of day, and all of our other friends who were going to the wedding were done at 3 p.m. We're like, do you guys work? What is this? So Aaron was the only one who was actually working until later in the day, and then I was doing my internship, my music therapy internship, and he picked me up from my internship director's house. He was like, where am I? This is so weird.
But originally we planned to carpool.
Yeah, we were going to go with
of 4.
Yeah, we had 4 people and then 2 of them were gone and then it was just us. And so I was like, I guess I'm just going to spend 4 hours in a car with this guy. Maybe I'll just get some work done. Maybe I'll drive. I don't know.
What better way to meet someone to be forced to sit in a car for 4 hours? That could be torture for some, but for you guys,
it was actually 5.5.
Was it?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I'd say you must have been enjoying it so much.
We did have fun. We did.
Aaron, is there anything you want to add to that story? I know when you told me it initially, I'm like, that can't be real. You're telling me about this girl you met and everything working out. Is that kind of how you remember the story? Is there anything you want to add?
So, I don't know if you felt this way, but that summer I had 5 to 7 weddings, pretty consecutively. And this last one, so Sammy and I were in a church group together. That's how we knew the couple that was getting married.
Okay.
I did not know them that well, to be honest. I knew the guy. So shout out to Tim and Sadie. I'm definitely going to send you guys this. We love you guys. These two are 2 of the ones that celebrated the hardest with us this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Sadie threw her bag across our hallway in excitement. So that was really fun just seeing that come full circle. But so we were in the same church group. Our whole group got invited to this couple's wedding. It was
so sweet.
It was really nice. It was also very far away. So it was the furthest wedding away of all the ones I had in the summer, and it was the people I knew the least. So I was coming up with, as you know I can do when I'm tired, every excuse in the book. I'm like, they don't know me that well. No one's going to notice if I don't go. But I felt like the whole week, God was just tugging at me of you're going to this wedding, and you really don't have a choice. And my perspective shifted of they could have invited someone they've known for years, but they invited me, and other people from our church group are going, and I want to get to know people better, and I'm still new to the city.
And you committed to driving me there.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Because you just reminded me. I remember you and I on the phone, and this is crazy you said that because I totally forgot about this. You and I talked. I think I was at my old Bloomington place. I must have been at the time, and you were debating, kind of giving the reasons, should I go? And I remember talking to you. And I think I was nudging you more, too. It's well, I think I literally said something along the lines of, well, they must think highly enough of you to go and, just do it. What else? So that's crazy you said that, dude.
Yeah.
Because you probably would have missed out on the opportunity to meet her. That's wild.
I got a text from my aunt yesterday that said, thank God that you went to that wedding.
Seriously.
And it's so true because we talk about that, not even if I didn't go, but even if I would have went. So you mentioned the people backing out. We were on a group message. And this is just a crazy story, too. One of my roommates went to a high school with 15 people per grade.
Yeah.
The third guy who was supposed to be in the car with Sammy and I, the night before we were leaving, he texted me and said, hey, I'm riding in a different car, so I don't need to ride anymore. I was like, no discussion, no hey, is that okay? Yeah. Are you going to be all right? Do you still want to go? I find out that guy went to the same high school as my roommate, which we're in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, crazy. Millions of people in a high school of less than 100 people. And then that was what led to Sammy and I being alone for that long. So It was just absolutely insane. And it was weird though, because I feel like neither of us are really the type of people that normally would feel super comfortable with that type of thing. But for some reason, it just wasn't that big of a deal. It was and I even remember joking with her. I'm I'm going to leave pretty early on Sunday morning. So if you want to stay, the rest of our group was getting brunch.
Okay.
And subconsciously, I was almost maybe this will be a way to get me out of going.
You were thinking ahead already.
Yeah. I was I don't know. But then she's I actually didn't want to stay either. So that's perfect. I'm all right.
Well, I had to work.
The truth comes out.
Whatever. It was just everything about it worked.
Yeah.
And it was weird. It was when we got in the car, it just felt like we had already known each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. You started asking me about my Myers-Briggs type.
I swear he asks everybody that.
Asking me a million questions. This guy's interviewing me. It was sweet though.
I had a lot of coffee in my
You
system.
did have a lot of coffee.
Good. That was before you quit. So, and I think that's an important point because I think there's a lot of people, and we kind of touched on this in an earlier episode. I think you were talking about passivity and that kind of things. It's there are situations, and we talked about this, where you might feel uncomfortable, or maybe it's I really could just skip this. But when you get out of your comfort zone and just do those, you never know what will happen. Maybe you'll meet the love of your life. Maybe you'll meet someone who offers you a job. I don't know what the situation is, but I would challenge everyone listening, those times when you don't feel like going to the gym, when you don't feel like going to church, when you don't feel like going XYZ, push through that and you never know what will happen. So I love that story, first of all, because it's just, like you said, it's a God thing. And I want to take a step back now because I think there's a lot of people watching this in a single season of life where they haven't dated anyone before. They've been through heartbreak with other relationships. So, Sammy, I want to start with you. You've been dating Aaron for almost 2 years, but I want to go back before you met him. Maybe you dated people, but more so the years of singleness. Were there any lessons you think of now or things you learned in those seasons of life that really helped you develop this relationship with Aaron? And if so, what are those things people right now who are single should be looking for? What did you do in those times when you weren't dating someone and before you met Aaron?
Well, I think being single gave me a lot of time to before I was single, I was dating someone who didn't have a faith life. And so then when that ended, then I could have more time to think about okay, what are my priorities? What are my beliefs? And just reconnect with Jesus, because that was just gone. So just the time to invest in that was really important. And then just learning okay, no, this, Jesus needs to be the center. And my aunt told me that too. So I kind of learned that from her, and that was a big deal. And then, can you ask the question again?
Yeah, I'm just curious. No, I think you hit it on the head there. Just curious. I talked to someone recently who's literally 23 years old, a year younger than myself, who's just stressing out, kind of, I wouldn't say crying, but you can kind of tell she was upset because things weren't working out with a guy. And it's just, I feel like there's a lot of people right now our age even early 30s, maybe 40s, whatever it is, where they just feel like the sense of urgency. They need to date someone to find fulfillment. So I'm just curious, what advice would you give to someone watching this to say, hey, like Aaron wasn't even on your radar. You were just enjoying that season of singleness. And what did you learn from it and how it kind of helped when you guys met and set you up for success?
I know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah. So I think I was in that stage for a little bit where it's like, okay, I'm ready to get back out there. Okay, I'm trying so hard. I'm trying so hard. I had my grip like this, so tight. And then once I like let that go and was like, I could be single for however long you want me to be, God. Like, because I know that like this isn't working, and like there were tears, and like there were like things that just felt gross or like that were frustrating or hurtful, and like that's just not how it. I came to a point where I was like, oh, that's just not. Like, if this is going to work, it's going to be easy. It's going to come out of nowhere. God just told me this is going to come out of nowhere. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just wait then. Like, what? I'm happy to be single for as long as you want me to, God. And then I met Aaron. Yeah. That's how it goes. You just got like letting go. Same thing like with my job stuff. And yeah.
It's weird that you said that, because literally probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, whenever this man here was shopping for a ring, he called me. And I don't want to steal your story. You can share it. It's just literally verbatim said, if this is going to work, if it's meant to be with the ring and stuff, it'll be easy. Same thing. Yeah. And you can kind of share, what was that process like? And then I want to kind of throw that same question to you, but you want to tell that story with the ring, how that all came together, and just, it's kind of reiterating what you said. If this is going to work, it's going to be a God thing. It's going to be easy. And I think go ahead.
Well, I should clarify on the easy part. Like, you still got to we still put ourselves out there.
Sure.
So, like, that was, like, a little, scary, but, like, it just, the alignment thing. So, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Sammy and I really do believe that. And I think that's a way that we encourage each other a lot, is that when things are smooth and flowing and easy, that's usually what they're supposed to be. And we've, been together long enough now through some tough situations that we would not have chosen to happen.
Yeah.
But then looking back, you see how God blessed us either individually or as a couple through that stuff. And I even remind Sammy, she reminds me from time to time of like, hey, we have no idea how this thing is going to happen. But remember, like 2 years ago, we didn't know each other existed.
Yeah.
And we could have been on the hunt to find one another for years and not. We grew up hundreds of miles away from each other, went to totally different colleges. She was around hundreds of thousands of people at the University of Minnesota. I was at a tiny school in southwestern Minnesota. So it's just like when God wants something to happen, like it's going to. And yeah, when I was ring shopping, I said, I'm going to go to this place, and if it's going to work, it's going to be easy. Yeah. There was hundreds of cars parked down the street, probably over a mile long, and there was just one open parking space right in front of the jeweler where I needed to go. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, that's easy. And then I walked in, saw 4 rings, found the one that I knew I wanted, and boom, everything just worked. So yeah, I think that, Proverbs talks about that. We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our paths. We roll our dice. The Lord determines how they fall. I think that's what you're saying. Like, we were rolling the dice, but the Lord still is at the end of the day, the one who's going to control how all that stuff shakes out.
100%. So while you have the mic there, I did want to ask you, because I obviously knew you a lot better before than I knew Sammy, just because you were kind of new to our group. So I kind of have an idea of maybe some of the past relationships. But what are some of the lessons you learned and some of the heartbreak that you went through, and lessons in that season of singleness that you think has really helped you with Sammy? And then the second question is, were you actively seeking? Because you mentioned the letting go thing, and we've talked about this before. There's so many guys especially that they just try, and they feel like they're doing so much, like literally doing so much. I have to plan the perfect day for this girl. I have to do X, Y, Z. But when you just let go, it's like all these people start reaching out to you. Good things happen. So talk to me a little bit about the lessons you learned before you met Sammy and past relationships and singleness. Mm-hmm. And then 2, were you actively seeking, or where were you at heart-wise when you met Sammy? Were you like, hey, I'm cool with being single for a while? Or were you like, you know what? I think I'm ready to find somebody. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that.
So, I mean, just countless lessons from stuff that I had messed up. We've talked about it before, I think, in episodes of just like not genuinely like being a younger guy and just not knowing, like, when you like a girl, what do you do? How do you ask a girl out? How do you go on a date? And it's kind of like a butterfly effect type of thing where you sort of learn little things along the way. And I would say that and Sammy and I have talked about this before, but I had all these really weird like situations where I would start talking to someone and I would say, hey, this person's cool. And then it would just crumble. And that happened 2 or 3 times, I would say, leading up to when I dated Sammy, to where I was finally just like, I don't even care anymore. Like, I really don't.
Yeah, just the energy, the amount of energy.
Yeah, and I would say, like, lesson-wise, looking back, how I would phrase it now, you know, in the seat that I'm in and the person I am today is I had a lot of other things defining my identity other than God, which was, you know, I have to have, like, the best job. I have to have, like, you know, the best physique. I have to try to find the prettiest girl who's, like, the coolest. And just
you
all
got
these.
that locked down, so that's
I did
good.
get that at the end of the day. So thankful for that one. But I think it was just like I was so in the world. And I think, too, one of the things was I started to realize that through going to our church and stuff, like there was a pretty big gap between like what a Christian relationship looks like and what a relationship in the world looks like. And like, I think my heart always knew that of just like, you talk to friends and you hear like all these heartbreaking stories and you're just like, that can't be it, right? Like that's not the playbook and the blueprint. Yeah. And then the interesting thing too, is looking back, I look at all the couples that I've always admired in my life. My grandparents, probably the couple I most admire. Sammy's grandma, we told her we got engaged in person on Sunday. Yeah. She literally told us, like, in tears, the thing that makes her the most happy about our relationship is that we keep God first. Because she said that's what me and your grandpa did, and that was, like, the magic that kept us together. And so looking back, like, I can piece that together. Back then, I didn't know it. But I would say one that sticks out to me, it was this girl that, like, I just only hung out with her a couple times, thought she was really cool, and she just completely stopped talking to me out of the blue. And she said, I just don't know, like, if you're in a place that I'm at faith-wise. And I really wasn't. Like, I was kind of new to it. I didn't really understand it. And I think that was kind of like an eye-opener to me. But she did say, she's like, I have no doubt that God has the perfect girl for you, and you're going to be, like, the perfect man for her when that day comes. And that was an eye-opener to me. It sucked at the time, but I also was... the reason I'm sharing that story is just because, like, if you are someone out there who... you are in that situation where you meet someone, their faith might not be where yours is. You don't have to like beat them down. Like you can use that as an opportunity to disciple. Yeah. That's really what she did to me. And I think that to me was kind of an eye opener of like, okay, if I want someone who, like you said, who their faith is important to them, I have to like become that first. Yeah. So I think that's, to sum all that up, that was a lot. But what Sammy and I talk about a lot and what we both believe is that you really have to become basically the person you want to attract. Yeah. Like Sammy was working on herself so much by the time I met her that like she wanted someone who, you know, was a good communicator. She's a great communicator. She wanted someone who's funny. She's funny. She wanted someone who's adventurous. She's adventurous. So it's like, you can't say, I want someone who's super athletic, but I never work out. I don't like to go outside. You know, it just doesn't work because that person's not going to be attracted. I literally had a coworker this weekend who went on a date with a guy that I know and just said he's a great guy, but then listed all these things that are like different about him than her. And you know, it's viable. So I think that's what I learned is that when you're looking at like what you want, you have to become that because the type of people that are going to be showing those qualities, that's what they're going to be looking for too.
100%. Yeah. I want to ask Sammy this question because you guys kind of brought it up. It seems to be the theme of this. I mean, we're a Christian podcast, so it makes sense. You guys talk a lot about keeping God in the center of your relationship. And I've seen and I've experienced personally as a Christian man, it's easy to compromise, you know, your values and what you would do, even with another Christian couple, another woman. How have you guys kept God in the middle of your relationship? And granted, nobody's perfect, but how have you guys kind of helped each other grow spiritually as a couple while still trying to keep proper boundaries? Because, again, you guys are obviously attracted to each other. But how have you guys kept God in the middle? Are there spiritual disciplines you guys have kind of developed together? I kind of think of the Sabbath things you guys can touch on, but is there other things you guys have done together as a couple before you're engaged that's really helped you mature as a couple, but really grow together?
That's a great question. I definitely want to say we did not really start. I mean, we started with the understanding that like that was really like central to us, but like in our relationship, it took a while to work it in.
Sure.
Because I think we've said this before, like, I think we've grown a lot, like, being together in our own faith.
For sure.
So that's really cool. But that should happen, right? Like, you guys should push each other. And yeah, but I think, stuff that we're doing now is like praying together. We try to do every night. Sometimes we're busy or sometimes too tired to stay awake or stuff like that. So praying together and blanking.
Go to church every Sunday.
We go to church every Sunday.
Oh, you guys
together.
do that too?
And we,
community
community stuff. Yeah, we're in our same group together. We haven't told them yet.
Yeah. Oh, surprise!
I'm so excited. Okay. And I think we talk about like how to apply it a lot in like our just day-to-day lives and like encourage each other. Like I've been thinking and talking about like how I want my job to like reflect my faith more and like really directly. And like Aaron's been helping me kind of shape that and ask me questions about it to figure that out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really good. I'm going to ask Aaron that same thing because I think I live with you. I see you every day. And I'm very privileged or blessed in the situation where I'm kind of a fly on the wall, figuratively, literally in our own house, where these two will sometimes be cooking in the kitchen together, or maybe they're up in the library room together. And I kind of just see the way they interact. And it's just genuine love. And I've talked to Aaron about this. It's just like, it's little things that I think of. Like if someone were to put me on a stage and say, Kyle, like give a speech about these two. It's like, I can think of a lot of situations where it's, you trying to pile drive her in the kitchen, be a lineman and block her, pick her up, want to wrestle her, all these little things. And I just, it's refreshing, but it's just like so cool as a friend of Aaron and Sammy to see them just like a genuine relationship. But I still want to stick on that question for you as the man who's supposed to be a leader in a relationship. Advice for guys in the spiritual realm. How do you lead spiritually well? But two, are there boundaries you even have to set spiritually until you are engaged moving towards marriage? Because I think sometimes two people can almost get attached too much spiritually before it's right. And it can even hurt to break off on that because you invest so much. So did you guys think about that at all when you were doing this? Like, hey, like, maybe we shouldn't be praying together until a certain time. Like, how did you guys approach that whole situation? And what advice would you give to the guys?
I want to tell a story.
Yeah. Jump back in. Move that thing back over here.
Tell a story. And then mingling of souls, too. That changed a lot of stuff when we read that book together. We had a sit down.
In what ways? Expand on that. I'm interested.
Well, I think just in like physical boundaries. Just we're
like a progression of like how a relationship goes.
Yes. Yep. And like right away not right away, but like literally like probably like 4 dates in, Aaron is like, we need to talk about like, so when you said like being a leader and stuff, like I thought of that conversation where I was like, whoa, like, are you okay? Like, did I do something? But like, he was just like, wanted to know like that I was like for real. And like, just like we talked about values. You asked me about my values and like just seeing if they aligned, just to like initiate that and make sure we're on the same page. Okay, sorry, I'll let you answer now.
Yeah, so I think it's huge because a lot of guys like have relationship problems, and I think that like throughout my life I've seen this happen. My parents aren't together, love them both to death. If they were here, they'd say the same thing. But I think that at times I saw situations where that happened, where no one was really leading, right? And we're contrasting that, like my grandparents, every Sunday, 6 a.m., my grandpa was suited up.
Yeah.
He had his suit tailored. He had that thing dry cleaned. He had my grandma up an hour early to make sure she was out of the house by 7 o'clock, which was still sometimes a stretch. But he just led in all aspects of their faith life. He would sign them up to be greeters. They'd be the first people at church, the last ones to leave. My grandma would bake cookies. My grandpa would carry all that stuff in, get my grandma in. And just seeing that growing up, I didn't really realize it till later, but I think that had a pretty big impact on me of just like my grandma like admired my grandpa so much.
Yeah.
Not only like as her husband, but I think just like you said, as like that accountability person. Like she was never going to miss church. Neither was he, because like they did that together.
Right.
So I think in terms of a relationship, like you said, communication is huge. And I think especially like as a woman, it's pretty scary because just like, frankly, there's a lot of like pretty crappy guys out there.
Yeah.
And like saying that I was probably one of those guys at one point, you know, where it's just like, you're just young and you don't know any better.
Yeah.
So I think that if you do want to get in like a serious relationship like that, I think that you just need to really like know what it is that you're trying to build and then be intentional about it. Because I think that's what I would echo what Sammy said, is like those relationships don't just happen. God could put the perfect person in your life, but he can't have those conversations for you. You still have to show up and be an active participant.
Yeah.
So I just think I would also say this though, that like as a guy, I think that could be a lot of pressure where you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to be this big leader. I would say read Kingdom Man. Those two books back there, Mingling of Souls and Kingdom Man by Tony Evans, could not recommend those enough. But what else I did want to say too is like I think a lot of it has to do with the right person, because I feel like there's relationships I was in that even if I did everything just exactly like I did with Sammy, it still wouldn't have worked.
Right.
It just wouldn't have been enough for the girl, or they would have been like, this is weird, this is too much. But I was just trying to show up as best I could as a man, and for you it worked. Like, because we were meant to be, you know?
Yeah.
But I really am a firm believer that, like, what's meant to be, you can't really mess up, but what's not meant to be, you could literally be doing everything biblically correct, everything, you know, earthly in the right way, and it could still not work.
Sure.
There was one other thing that came to mind that I wanted to think about, that I wanted to share, but maybe it'll come back to me.
I have another.
And was there anything you wanted to add on that, Sammy, too, while we're on that subject?
Yeah, I was thinking too, I didn't want to ask God before about like decisions that I made. Like, God, is this what you want? Is this good? Like, am I following you? Because I was scared that the answer would be no and I wouldn't get to do what I wanted. But I was like, you know, what's more scary is if it's not what God wants, and then it just ends in like just hurt and a mess. So,
That's good.
Yeah, so I asked him this time, you know, and he kept saying like, yeah, stay. And I was like, okay, great. It just felt right. So
Yeah. I want you to keep the mic here because I have
okay.
a question. We talk a lot about leadership in a man's role, and the Bible talks about the woman submitting and what that means. How has that played out in your guys' relationship? Because I think the one thing that I notice a lot about you out of a lot of couples I meet or know is you balance each other very well, whether it's demeanor, whether it's just your personality. I think you balance Aaron out very well and vice versa. In terms of submitting or letting him lead, what advice would you give to women who watch this show when they're dating a guy and he wants to lead? What does he have to be doing? I don't think you'd be willing to let Aaron lead you if he was out there doing stupid stuff. I think he's earned your trust, but I think there are a lot of women who might be in that situation where it's like, well, he is the guy, I should let him do X, Y, Z, but as a man, he's not being responsible and he's not letting God lead him first. So have you had any advice for women like, hey, if you're with this guy, this is what he should be doing? And in your relationship with Aaron, how has that played out in your guys' your relationship?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think early on, like our church talked about like gender roles and stuff, and I was furious. I was so mad because I just hated that word submission.
Yeah.
And I would recommend to ladies watching that if you don't like that you should reach out to some, and I still it makes me feel gross. So still talking to God about that. I do still, I like letting, like Aaron does lead. He just is like natural at that. But I reached out to some of the older women in our church, and they're just so graceful about it and just kind of explained that to me more. So that was really cool. But I think, the communication is huge. And that's a lot of times what I think is missing. And just like emotional awareness too, I think can be really hard. Emotional awareness of like yourself and then like of whoever you're with. That's really important. Just like that connection to yourself. If you don't have that connection to yourself, you're not going to be able to like make that work with another person. That's going to be like really hard. So leading in that way. Also just I think the intentionality is really important. Like Aaron like plans our Friday night date nights all the time. I like haven't planned very many because he just already has something planned. And like just even like little stuff like that where it's like keeping it so fun and just like serving too, the servant-hearted leadership, like I'm gonna do this for you. That's really important too. And that I think comes naturally a lot of times when you're with the right person, I hope. So,
No.
yeah.
And you bring up a good point. I do want to touch on the submission thing, and this is more of a call out for guys. And it might be Kingdom Man, if I'm remembering. A lot of guys think that because they're a guy or in a relationship that the woman should just, kind of bow down to them or whatever they say goes. But I think this is probably the most important thing. If you're not submitting to God first, when we think of submission, we think of like, I don't want to do that. Even as guys to God, it's like, I don't want to submit to God. Like I have my own thing. But if you knew the person you were submitting to was like perfect and wanted the best thing for you, it would be an easy thing. Granted, as humans, guys mess up. We're not perfect, but I think that's important to keep in mind. Like guys, if you want to lead well, you have to get your instructions from the right person. That's from God. We talk about that a lot on the show is like, if you want to love people well, you have to be filled up first, and that comes from God. So where is your source of fulfillment coming from? It's not an entitlement thing. It's a leading well because you know who you're looking up to. And Aaron, I kind of want you to touch on that. Have you had to spend a lot, and I'm sure you have, but to lead Sammy well and just in your relationship as a couple, how much has, seeking wisdom from God and like seeking him first played a role in that? Have you experienced that? Is there any advice you'd give to guys watching it? Because I know it wasn't always like that. You touched on it earlier. It's like, hey, I used to be a dumb guy, immature growing up, and now to know the man you are now, it's like you would never know the difference. So how have you changed as a result of your relationship with God, essentially?
Well, you make such a good point that you don't just know how to do that, right? Like you just don't know how to live. And I really am a firm believer that I can't remember who we were talking about this. We were just talking about this with a couple. Maybe it was Terry and Jane or somebody in our church group recently, where I think a lot of people that are living in sin and all that, it's just because they just genuinely don't know better. And they're showing all this marketing and all these movies and music and everything that just says, put your needs first. You can do whatever you want. You can live however you want. And we all know what that leads to. So I think that getting in the Word and getting involved in a great church where you start to get the playbook, then you can kind of execute it. But if you don't have a plan, you're not going to be able to know. And quite honestly, too, I mean, even just a practical thing, like Sammy knows this, you know this, I'm a huge learner. So I read so many books about relationships and dating, one of which was the Bible, but I read practical books too, because we read the Song of Songs and Mingling of Souls, but you read the Song of Songs and you tell me if that tells you too many practical tips for how to ask a girl out. I dare you to tell a girl her neck looks like the Tower of David. You might still be single. So, I mean, it's a mix, right? Like you can be spiritually aligned. And I would even say that, like when we talked about starting this channel, I think that's the gap we saw is like, you can be spiritually aligned, but if you don't have the practical knowledge too, they go together. Right. And that's like what I'm saying in terms of understanding, like, okay, how do you communicate with a woman? How do you set dates? Like, how do you listen better? Like I'm still reading books all the time about like listening. And that's something that we talk about a lot, like validating each other's feelings and like just all that. There's so much that goes into having a healthy relationship that you have to be leading yourself, like you said, to getting information. Whether that's from the Bible, ideally, that has to be number one. At the same time, though, I think that you can be led to other books in addition to that. You don't want to be reading books that don't align with your values. Like there's a lot of dating advice out there that...
How to hook up.
Exactly. It's just very worldly based. It's about, this is what you need to do to get as many girls as you can. Right. If that's not your value set, don't do that. But I do think it's helpful just to understand, like, how are men and women different? And what do each type of person need, to be happy in a relationship or whatever. So that's kind of what comes to mind for me is that I think the Bible is the best place to go to understand like the values and the principles and what God's design for relationships is. But I also think that you kind of need to get practical too, because you can know all that stuff. It's like understanding everything about like healthy food,
Right.
but then having no recipes, right?
Yeah.
Like you need both. So that's kind of my thought. And I think it's really hard to date someone that like isn't kind of at the level that you're at in terms of like your knowledge and just like where you're at in life. Like if you're not aligned, one person's going to feel that.
Yeah, 100%.
And with Sammy and I, it's like we're always trying to grow. Like we're always reading different stuff, and she'll send me a podcast. I'll send her
Men
a
of the Kingdom
book.
podcast.
Yeah, strangely has not sent me that one yet. But so we just share a lot of that stuff, and I think it's too. I guess we're just talking about like the leading and submission. Like you said that I naturally like lead. I think that you naturally are okay with following people that you feel safe with them leading. And I've seen that. That's another thing too. I saw that early on with Sammy and her dad. And it's a weird thing to say, but seeing Sammy allow her dad to lead her in her life at times was really attractive to me.
Right.
Because I said, I could see that that's a quality that she's capable of, where
100%.
I definitely had seen other girls in my life who didn't have a good relationship with their dad, that dynamic wasn't there. They're always like butting heads.
Yeah.
And I'm projecting into my future life. I'm like, I don't want that. And Sammy and her dad to this day, I love being around them. They're so fun. They love each other. They support each other. She's volunteering for him every week. Back when he was first starting his nonprofit, Sammy was doing like a lot of the boots on the ground work.
Yeah.
And again, I saw, I'm like, this is a girl who's not afraid to commit to stuff, who's not afraid to be selfless. And like when you're dating someone, they show you who you are, for better, or who they are, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And I think as guys, we ignore it one way or another. So I would just say, guys, if you're dating someone, be intentional. Like the Maya Angelou quote says, when someone shows you and tells you who they are, listen.
Yeah.
Because
really good.
It's the truth. I mean, there's so many moments when over these last 2 years where I just saw Sammy being herself and being the woman that God made her. And I'm like, yep, those are all the things that I think are going to make this work.
It's funny you talk about the projection thing. I remember you telling me a story after I think you met her grandmother. So I think it was the first time too. He was over at her house and he came home and said, you know what, Kyle, like watching her grandmother and her personality, if Sammy is anything like her growing up or when she's older, sign me up or something to that extent. And I've met her grandmother and I can agree with that. She's an amazing woman. And I was there for Thanksgiving. My family lives a little further away and they were gracious enough to have me over, and I was just eating a food coma. I was having a great time. It was awesome. So we've talked about a lot of good things. And I would say when I think of your relationship, and I'm sure there's things behind the scenes I don't know, there's all positive things. And a lot of people, when times get tough, that honeymoon phase might go away. It gets tough. And you're going to run into arguments. You're going to run into things that annoy each other. You guys, I'm sure, have had it. Talk to me a little bit about that, Sammy. How have you guys overcome some of the challenges that you've had in your relationship in the last 2 years? It's inevitable. Everybody's going to have that. Mm-hmm. How have you guys as a couple came together after that and grown stronger from it? But how do you guys kind of navigate that? I think a lot of people, like I said, in this culture today, when the going gets tough, they leave. And I know that's not the type of people you are. I know that's not the type of people you want to be. And I know in our C group especially, they've been through a lot of tough things too. I think of Beth and Dave and just the challenges they've gone through. So even in the last 2 years, what are some of the challenges you guys face as a couple, and what advice would you give to single people and people who are early on in a relationship to overcome that and come out better for it on the other side?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you start dating someone, you're getting to know them like on a deeper level, and like we're all human beings, so there's like a bunch of sin crap that's in there too. So just like coming into the relationship with that in mind of like this is a human person and I'm gonna do my best to love them exactly how they are, like flaws and everything. And like I think that is like the piece. It's like the covenant relationship match handler. It's like the covenant part. It's like if you want to like move towards the covenant, then you gotta like you gotta show up and like be ready to be patient. And I think a lot of like in the past, like I would put people up on this pedestal and just be like so like let down when they like would mess up or something. And it's just like, that's just not realistic, and it's not like like God's up there. God, Jesus is the only perfect human. So just like thinking about the grace and things like that has been really important. And talking to each other about what we need is really important. We had that conversation too, and that changes. So giving updates, sometimes you come across an update of like, well, now I need this. So, and like we process like situations and like hardships differently too. Like Aaron's like a really like action oriented person. Like all the time. Like even if something really hard is going on, it's like, I just got to work out. That's all I got to do. And then I feel better. It's great. And I'm like, well, we just process this. I'm a lot slower. I need to sit with it. I need to talk about it for like maybe a couple days, before I can feel better about it. So just like learning that and not getting frustrated with each other or being critical, but just coming at it with grace, I think.
No,
Something really we're still learning. I say it right, but
it's a lifelong
still practicing.
lesson.
Still practicing.
Note about that. Aaron, what about you? I think men and women, we've talked about this again. We, especially Aaron and I would say, and a lot of guys I know, is like if there's an issue, our first instinct is to solve it. And it's hard. I know personally speaking, I'll speak for myself. When I've been in relationships where a girl is like struggling with something or something came up, to me, the solution is pretty obvious. It's like, okay, if this is the problem X, the solution is Y. What are we doing here talking about this? And that's the wrong approach. And, knowing Sammy, I'm sure that probably doesn't fly either. So have you, as a man, struggle with that? Yeah. And how do you adjust to that? You're one of the more patient guys I know and like level-headed. How have you been able to adjust that? And then to my question for Sammy that I want you to answer is, what are some of the challenges you faced and how have you guys overcome that? Or how have you?
Well, if you remember, we had Dave Orlowski sit in this exact chair,
and
I asked him the same question, which typically, Kyle, if you ask people questions, you don't know the answer. Yeah. So I'm still in that stage where I cannot guarantee I know the answer. I will say that intellectually, I know a question that has saved me in a lot of situations. Sammy would probably agree with this, and she'll probably laugh. When I say this, our situations typically go better. I'll be honest, a lot of times I don't. I'm tired, have a lot on my mind. I forget about it. Like you said, I just really want to help. But the question is, sweetie, do you need me to listen or do you want my help? Yeah. Or do you want my opinion? And that goes a long ways because there's times where she's telling me about her day and some kid threw her guitar across the room and her chicken got left out and it's bad and the windows got left open and her car got a flat tire and who knows what. And like, those are problems that she doesn't need me to solve. Yeah. There's nothing I can do. If I start saying, well, yeah, the ukulele, didn't you have that ukulele insured? That'll go over by a lead balloon. Yeah. So, but then also there's times where I'm kind of just like, she's saying, I don't know if I should schedule this thing or this thing. And I'm like, oh man, like no way. And she's like, well, what do you think I should do? Yeah. But I would just say, guys, that's my piece of advice. Don't cross those up. If she wants you to listen, don't be giving advice. If she wants your advice, don't be sitting back. And that's where I think like the leading comes in of like leading doesn't mean doing all the talking. A majority of times, I think that our relationship is healthier if Sammy's doing more of the talking. Because I love listening to her. I tell her that all the time. I can tell when stuff's on her mind. Yes. And I just say, I can tell something's on your mind. Like, what is it? Sometimes she won't even know. But then I just sit back and she starts talking and I just say, well, what else? What else? Or like, really, what about this? And I think that's a big thing is like, a lot of times I know that we've kind of like chunked down when Sammy's like, oh, didn't even know that was bothering me. Yeah. And then it's like, you can just feel energetically like, okay, that's gone. So I would say that's a big one is just separating like when action needs to be taken and when it's just like she had a hard day. She just wants someone to listen. Right. And I was going to say this earlier, but this was like when a point in our relationship when I knew that we were kind of like rounding a corner was when I noticed that when tough things were going on, like she was having a problem in her life or something happened or somebody did something and she wanted to talk about it. I noticed that she started coming to me in situations where I think when she was single, she maybe was going to her dad or to her close friends. And I started coming to her for similar types of things. Right. And like Sammy said, we're different in the way of like, I might be going through something. Sometimes I might not even tell her that. I just go work out, go to bed early, drink a couple extra glasses of water, eat a healthy breakfast, and say, okay, hopefully this is better.
Yeah.
But that was something that I noticed of like, okay, if this girl like cares about me and trusts me enough to be the first call when that stuff's going on, like I need to learn how to navigate what she needs and show up for her well, and not just do what I need, not be like, well, have you worked out today? Or like, well, what time did you go to bed last night? Because that's like, it's funny, but she probably isn't laughing because I do that if I'm not careful. Yeah. It's like, well, how many grams of protein did you eat yesterday? How much time did you spend in REM sleep?
How much protein?
So I think that's a big thing is like, and to your point too, like, I don't think that as a man, you should expect like a girl you're dating to just have you be that guy. Because especially in Sammy's case, like her dad is the most amazing guy. There's times when she'll ask me something, I'll literally say, I don't know. Maybe we should talk to your dad about it. Because her dad's a brilliant guy, and we
a lot of experience.
Exactly, we both admire him, and there's a lot of times where he has better answers to stuff than we do.
Yeah.
Or I'll ask Sammy a question, and she'll say, "Oh, my dad's talked about that before," or whatever. So, yeah, that's just something that comes to mind. Kind of funny. Definitely still a work in progress for me, but I would just say less is more, and if you can become a good listener, I think, men or women, that's a great skill.
It's great advice.
And the Bible talks about that too. Of like the tongue is like the gateway to hell and all these things. I mean, again, we have one mouth and 2 ears for a reason. So I feel like that's a great time to stop talking.
No, that's a good point. I picked up a book off I might have mentioned this on other shows. I'm very blessed to live with Aaron, Max, and Ashanti because they have a whole bunch of books up in our little library room, and I can just go in. And it's like I'm in Barnes and Nobles. And one of the books was about listening, and she quoted one of the Proverbs verses where it was, the wise listen or something to that extent. So I just have a couple more questions here because I know you guys have a bedtime, and so do I. So one of the last questions is I see a lot of times when someone starts dating someone, their life becomes solely focused on that person and they don't have time for their friends. And I think it's really important to have that balance of, you with your girlfriends, you with your guy friends. How did you guys balance that? I think over the course of relationships, I've seen it. You guys have gotten closer and closer, and obviously you're going to spend more time together. But I still think you both do a good job balancing that out where you'll go golf with guys on Saturday. Maybe you'll go out for coffee with the girls, whatever it is. Has that played a big role in your guys' relationships? Was it a challenge, or how would you advise people the importance of like making those times for those friends who've been with you? And you can have both a good relationship with your girlfriend, boyfriend at this time, but still making that time for those people that are also important in your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it starts with the intentionality again. Like, okay, what do we want from this relationship? Or even with yourself, like, okay, what was not what I wanted in my last one? And like, what do I want to be different? So like, that was a huge thing that I wanted to be different. And like, my friends told me that even, like, friends are smart. They can see, like, they know you pretty well. So,
real quick, you're saying in the relationship before, you weren't spending as much time. You were too focused on them and not, okay.
Yeah.
Make sure.
So more friends. So, the intentionality and like telling the person that you're dating, like, hey, like this was hard in my last relationship, and like in this one, I want it to be this way instead. Right. So that was something that we like started off with, and I think it's a hard balance. like we're like in this crazy, like everything opening back up with COVID and stuff. Like during COVID, we got a lot of like one-on-one quality time, and like seeing friends was so hard. So now that everyone is out and about, it's just like we're struggling with that balance again. Where it's like we still need our one night of like our date. We try and do that every week, unless we're traveling. Yeah. And so that's an awesome rhythm to have. Would recommend. And then that is like your one night, so then you have the other days to go be with friends. And I think like a lot of your friends are my friends now, and a lot of my friends are your friends. Then we made friends like as a couple together, so then that gets easier too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. That's awesome. I wanted to bounce that question to you real quick, and then we're going to go in kind of this two things left that I want to ask you guys, but just kind of speak to me a little bit, Aaron. I live with you, so I get to see you every day, whether I want to or not. And it's mostly for the want to, for sure. But how have you kind of balanced it out? Was there a contrast between previous relationships where it's just, I got to be with her, and then I see you with Sam, where it's like you guys are very intentional with your date nights. Like I'm telling you, on Friday nights, I'll think of something cool, like, oh, it'd be fun. Let's get the guys together. Oh, now I think it's Friday night. I know Aaron's not going to be in there because he already has that commitment. No joke. It's kind of frustrating sometimes, I'll be honest. But, how have you been able to balance the two in a serious relationship? Now you're engaged over the last 2 years. How have you been able to do that? And what advice would you give to guys listening?
So funny enough, I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but in my last serious relationship before us, Max told me the same thing. He's like, he didn't really he was never really close with the girl I was with. So he said, he's like, I just feel like you and I are far less close than we were before you guys started dating. And that that was after her and I had broken up, but that broke my heart. Yeah. It's that's my dude. That's my brother literally telling me I didn't feel like I was close to you. I didn't feel like I could talk to you. It's whoa.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So that was really hard. And I mean, kudos to him. I look at guys like Max who aren't afraid to be honest with you, because that's a hard thing to say. Yeah. And he didn't say it in I'm trying to make you feel bad way. He's saying this as I love you, and now that you're single again, we're together a lot. Yeah. And he just it was honestly really cool. As guys, it's hard for us to be vulnerable, but he just straight up told me, he's like, I missed you. Yeah. I feel like I got my friend back, and I promised him, myself, and all my other friends I'm never going to let that happen again.
Yeah, that's good.
And I would say, too, that, Sammy and I really work hard to encourage each other. I know how much fun she has with her friends, and she knows how much fun I have with my friends. And again, too, sometimes she'll go grab lunch with her friends. I'll go grab lunch with my friends. Maybe at night, we'll all hang out as a group. Yeah. Or maybe in the morning, we'll go to church together, and then she'll go do something with someone. I'll go do something with someone. So it's you can get creative. But I would just say, life is meant to be lived all the way around. Yeah. And it's kind of level of priorities too, right? Because I did have a different discussion with a couple friends where they're we feel like you're, saying no to us a lot, which straight up, I am saying no to you more because, again, I used to have 7 nights of a week where I could do whatever I wanted. Now, 1 night a week is church group, 1 day is church, and 1 night is a date night with Sammy. So that's 3 nights a week that I'm booked no matter what. Yeah. And then,
podcast on every other
exactly, week. Podcast. I'm a pretty social person, so I have a lot going on. And I do think it's you just have to be okay with the fact that, yes, you are going to have to say no to some of those things, but that's okay. And I think right away that was really hard for both of us, because I think we even had some friends who maybe kind of mentioned it to both of us individually in our relationship. And we had seen through it of you know what? No, this is different. And like you said, naturally you are going to spend that time. So I think you have to differentiate of
an unhealthy amount.
Exactly. It's totally healthy to be hanging out more and to be busier, because we're literally moving towards spending the rest of our lives together and becoming one family. And that's big stuff. It takes time. So I would just say though, that no matter what, first of all, date someone that your friend group enjoys being around. That was a huge thing for me, is I always knew that I wanted a girl literally I would have dreams about this, of a girl that when she walks in the room, everyone's oh. And even today, we were sitting around the dinner table, we're all so tired, we're quiet. Sammy comes home, our friend Kenzie's dog comes out, and she's in a different room, and we just hear, oh, Masi. And everyone's so happy, and that's just what I've always wanted, is someone who that I'm with, that when they show up, everyone just is smiling and happy they're there. Because I've definitely been in relationships where when I'm around my girlfriend's friends, I feel like they're thinking, what the heck is this guy doing here? Or when she's around my friends, it's my friends are nice to her, but I can just tell that they're also kind of I would much rather just be hanging out with Aaron. Yeah. Where early on, even this is interesting too, I'll shout out Max again. One time, I think because of that, I was still had a little bit of fragility around bringing Sammy to some of our stuff. And I even told Max one time, I'm hey, I'm thinking about having Sammy come to this, but I know that was kind of going to be our time. And he's dude, bro, Sammy's amazing. Bring her around anytime. And so it's it's different too, because even him, that was my friend that was calling me out for spending too much time before. Yeah. Now he's no.
180.
Yeah, he's just no, bring her around. So I think to that point. Like, you should be with someone that if they are around when you're hanging out with your friends, like, it's just an addition and not like, oh, I wish they weren't here.
Good. Awesome. I appreciate you guys sharing that. So I would be very disappointed myself if we didn't share with the viewers the engagement story. I think everybody's curious how it happened. I obviously know a little bit, but I want you guys to take your time with this because it's a great story. Maybe even the weeks leading up to it, the conversations you and I have had, and then even up to the day it happened. Kind of just take your time with this one. Whoever wants to go first or share their version of the story. I think it's going to be interesting for them to know. So, Sammy, tell me the engagement story of Aaron and Sammy.
Yes, it does make sense for me to go first because I was much less in the know about this thing. I mean, it's been in the back of my mind for a while. But, yes. Okay, so we were up at Aaron's cabin with his mom's house, but it's the cabin. Right. And my whole family got to come up. Aaron's like, oh, it would be so nice, like, for your family to come up. They could have, like, a little vacation. It'd be so cool. I'm like, yeah, I would love that. And so they were up there. And last year we went to go see the fireworks on the boat on the lake. So thought nothing of it when we got in the boat to go on the lake. I should say before this, I was in my pajamas, ready. I came out. We went to the winery. I was, in my, like, winery clothes, like, a little nicer, nothing crazy. But then I came back and was like, time for, like, bug-proof, like, comfortable clothes. So then I got in those and said, I am ready for fireworks and bed.
Aaron's mind, no.
So then Aaron told me, he's like, hey, like, Jack wants to take a couple of photos of us. I'm like, well, that'd be nice. He's like, yeah, so if you want them to look nice, like, maybe you should change out of your
maybe you should get out of your pajamas.
USA shirt.
Yeah, what did it say? God bless America.
God bless the USA, and the S was like cheetah print.
Oh, no. Because this was, you might have mentioned, this was on 4th of July.
This is on the 4th of July.
Yeah, under the fireworks. Continue on.
Okay, so we got in the boat for the fireworks, and I was not wearing my pajamas anymore. And everyone was, like, kind of running around frantically, and I was like, well, maybe Aaron is, like, telling them to hurry because it's, like, he wants them to be on the boat. So then we were on the boat, we got out there, and I'm like, why aren't we stopping? Like, this is, like, it's fine. Like, why are we going? So anyway, Aaron gets the thing all set up. He's like, Sammy, like, I think the propeller's messed up. Can you go check it? And I was like, why am I doing this right now? Like, it's fine. Like, I just want to see the fireworks. And then he comes up there with me, and it's like, can you get down, like down there. Like, I'm like, why? I can't see it already. And then he's like, well, I actually didn't ask you to come up here to check the prop. I wanted you to come up here to ask you to marry me. And then he had, hand to the pocket, and I was just freaking out. We were, like, on the back of the boat, so it's a little, like, I could have fallen off if I got too excited, but I was pretty excited.
And at this point, what was going through your head? Do you even remember what you were thinking? Did you think it was real? Like, what was going through your mind? Because you mentioned you've been wanting this for a while. You guys have talked about it, but you had no idea this was coming. So what were you thinking in that moment?
Well, honestly, I was, like, I did think about it, like, during the day. Like, I think I knew. I think, like, a part of me, like, knew that it was going to happen. Because I put it out of my mind because I'm like, Jack would not shoot in the dark. My brother is a photographer, Jack Pavette Photography. Check him out.
Really good.
He's really amazing.
I'll say that.
And so I was like, he wouldn't shoot in the dark because the natural lighting is just so much better. And so I put it out of my mind. So I was super surprised. Okay, what was going through my head? I was just like, I can't believe this is happening right now. Oh my gosh. And just, like, didn't know what to do with myself, basically, because I was on a boat. Like, if I was, like, on the ground, I maybe would have, like, taken a lap or something. I couldn't get my energy. So, but it was really sweet. Like, my whole family was there. Yeah. And, like, they got to see that whole thing. But my mom, I didn't say anything because I was just freaking out. My mom was finally like, so what do you say? And I said yes. I said yes. And then, yes, the photo shoot commenced and the fireworks. I did not see any fireworks until the finale and everyone started cheering. And I was like, I was cheering for, like, a different reason. Yeah. It was pretty sweet. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Big surprise.
Aaron, what about you? Is there any Does that story line up with what was going through your head, or to kind of walk me through, the planning, maybe some of the conversations we had leading up to that? What was going through your mind? Like, as your friend, I was thinking about this, I think it was last night I was laying there. It's like, we on Monday we'd celebrated with you guys, had a bunch of friends over, but I don't think it really hit me. You're asking someone to spend literally the one life you get with them for the rest of their life.
I know.
And it's like, wow, you don't realize that until you like take seconds. Oh, it's probably scary for you thinking like, I know obviously you love Sammy, like you want to be with her, but what were the emotions going through your head, leading up to that and then getting to that day knowing like tonight I'm going to ask this girl to be with me for the rest of my life. Talk me through that.
So, stalling because I need some time to think about this, but I just wanted to thank you for coming up with this idea. And Kyle's given us a ton of shout outs, but I would just say that like Kyle's one of the most important people to us. Mm-hmm. And like he's always speaking encouragement into us. He's just an amazing friend in the sense of like he speaks truth to us. He loves us like practically in the terms of like if we need a ride to church, he's there. Like he will
wait for us.
He will wait for us when we're running late. Like he's always coordinating like little stuff and introducing us to friends. And I just think that means a lot. So like if you're a guy watching this and you're like, hey, I'm single, it's like I think of we all in sports, like we all have those teammates that like even if you don't know them that well or whatever, coaches, it could be whoever it is, but it's like people who can make an impact on you. And I think like having Kyle cheerlead us on has been a huge thing for us. And I think he's kind of like spoke life into us to like almost speak into existence like who we could be and then practically help us get there. So as I'm thinking, just kudos to you.
I appreciate that.
I don't know. It's just really awesome. And I'm just honored to have a podcast with him. And it's just so cool that I'm literally sitting here with one of my best friends, my fiance. And we're just talking about this. It's really exciting.
It's still weird hearing you say that. I'm not used to it yet. It's just like, oh.
It's very exciting.
So I would just say that if you're a single guy watching this or girl, it really doesn't matter. And you have a relationship of a friend who you really believe in and you love the other person, like be there for them because that will mean more to them than you ever know. And not a lot of people are like that. Everyone's so self-centered. And right now, you just happen to be in a season of singleness. Yeah. I know God has an incredible woman set up for you. I can't wait to do the episode where I'm on the other side of the mic. And I pray about that all the time, too. I just see it in my mind. I feel it in my heart. And but yeah, I just kudos to you for being so selfless in the sense of that. In terms of that night, I would say, honestly, my goal was up until we got on that boat, I genuinely was trying not to think about it because I had Sammy's family up there. Yeah. And especially her brother. Her brother is 21. When I was 21, the last thing I wanted to do was be at a girlfriend's, my sister's boyfriend's cabin.
Yeah. On 4th of July.
On 4th of July. It's like you've got a ton of fun stuff you could be doing. But again, speaking of selfless, he turned down some other plans that he had, came up there, boarded his dog for the weekend, and then basically was our pro bono photographer. And I mean, means the world to me. I know means the world to Sammy, her parents. He captured all those memories that we'll now have forever. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, they got up there. We got up there on Thursday. They got up there Saturday. Or they got up there, Friday, Saturday. Whatever it was, we had a whole weekend before this happened. And in my mind, I'm like, I just want the whole rest of this weekend to be normal and fun. And I know at the end of this weekend, it's going to be about us, but I want the time up to that to be about them. And to make sure, like, I want Jack and Chloe to have a great time. I want to get out on the water. I want Sammy to be kneeboarding. I want us to have great food. I want us to laugh together, go to the winery, go out to dinner. So genuinely, Kyle, like, leading up to it, I really was totally fine. And I think that's why Sammy had no idea. Because my focus was on them up until, like, okay, once we're on that boat. And then the way I've described it is, like, I ran out of things to distract me. Yeah. So I was thinking, okay, do we have everyone? Check. Okay, is the boat lift down? Check. Okay, do I have the ring? Check. Okay, does Jack have his camera? Check. Okay, we're moving. Check.
Is Sammy on the boat?
Is Sammy on the boat? That was a late one, but check. So I just had all these things I was processing that I'd thought through of, like, what am I going to tell her to get on the back of the boat? And honestly, I think, too, like, that's just, like, that little stuff. Like, it's like that when you're planning dates even, too. Like, as a guy, I think that it really helps if you just, like, think ahead on that stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, again, like, good dates or whatever, good relationships, they don't happen by chance. But I will also say that I can't take nearly all the credit for this because Sammy's family knew the whole time, and they were complete troopers. She had no idea. They didn't trip anything up. And so we finally got out there. And then at that moment, again, like I love speaking. We literally have a podcast where we're talking into a camera. So it's like you wouldn't think you'd be nervous. When I got to the moment where I had her distracted, I had the ring, I saw Jack had his camera out, I saw her family, I basically froze up. Because I just could not realize, like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, this is literally it. There's no more details I can think of to forget about this. So, I don't know. Yeah, I literally froze up. And that's why I just said, like, hey, I want you to marry me. And that's why there was a delay in her saying yes, because I didn't say, will you marry me?
I was also not firing on all cylinders either.
Again, I mean, we've been in the sun a lot, some late nights.
I was just so excited.
But I would say, and this sounds cheesy, that like part of me does feel like a lot has changed, and it has, you know, like in our status and what this means for us. But another part of me is like, I feel like my soul has just felt like since the minute you got in my car to go to that wedding, we've just been together. Mm-hmm. And I just knew like that was the way it was going to be. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, maybe now there's a ring and some meaning, but I don't know. I don't think like in terms of how I felt really has changed. It's just the natural next step.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got one more question before I get to it. To that point, I remember one of our friends, Brennan, I don't remember when you talked. It was early on. I think it was like you had talked to him and the word got back to me. We weren't living together at the time, but basically along the lines of like, you knew she was the one, like early on. And a lot of people, I don't think could say that. And like, just to hear it from you and now to see where we are now, it's like, wow, like that was something special 2 years ago or else we wouldn't be here. So last question I have, and this is kind of what I wanted the podcast to revolve around, but I like where it's gone. And we can start with you, Sammy. When or how did you know Aaron was the one you would be willing to say yes to spend the rest of your life with?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think it was pretty weird, like, after that super long car ride. And, like, I ran into one of our friends that was in our connection group. And she's like, you guys could have ridden home with anybody else. And, like, well, Aaron had to drive his car. But she's like, you could have ridden in a different car, but you guys were just, like, together. Like, and then you were just together. And then we were all like, oh, what's going on? So, I'm sorry, can you ask the question?
Yeah, I guess, was there a moment in your relationship or a culmination over time? When did you know Aaron was the one?
Okay, yes. Sorry, I just got so distracted thinking about Kelsey. Okay, I think, so yeah, we got out of the car. It was like weird, right? We like didn't know what to do because we felt like we knew each other so well. So we were like, okay, well, we should hang out sometime. But I didn't know like where he was at. Like if he thought like hanging out like as friends, like talking, just having good conversations, or if he was like interested in another way. But I think, so he asked me on a date. Well, he asked me to he's like, oh, we should get drinks. I'm like, yeah, drinks. I can do drinks. It's chill. I can do drinks. He planned like this huge, like elaborate date. We went like 5 different places. It was like a tour of downtown St. Paul, like Lower Town. And it was just like the best date ever. And I was just like, this has got to be it. This has got to be it. Like I was trying to be chill, right? I'm like, that's just one date, Sammy. Like maybe you don't know, but yeah. That's kind of when.
That's sweet. Aaron, same question for you. I mean, we said after first date you kind of knew, but is there a moment when you think of Sammy where it's like, I don't know what it is for you, but you knew like she was the one?
Well, there was weird little things leading up to it that just weird stuff. Like, again, like you said, I totally, at that point in my life, I had just started a business. I had just moved to the Twin Cities. I was totally at a point where I'm like, I have so much to figure out in my own life. The last thing I need is a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I was totally fine being single. At that stage of my life, like you were in a relationship. And I remember like when I got out of my relationship, we started hanging out a ton. So again, I know this is a question for me, but that's a great tip. If you're a guy watching this, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're single, just be a good friend. And when your friends are hurting, maybe they just got out of a tough breakup, like be there for them. That means the world to them. Or if you're in a great relationship, whatever it is, like your relationship status should never change your friendship. So I think leading into it, it was like I was in a very like open place, but was not needing it. Like on my priority list, a relationship was very low. But the whole car ride down, it was just like every single thing that we talked about was just like, wow, if I could just like pick how I would want someone to be, it would be this. And it's like, it's still going to this day. Like it's still to this day, I like find things out about Sammy. We made lists. We both had separate lists before we met each other of like what we wanted in someone. And we've shared those with each other. I literally had a list of 100 things. And if Sammy doesn't hit all 100 of those, it's pretty dang close. Like I'm talking 90 to 95 percentile.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. And I think that's just huge is like, if you tell God what you want, he knows people out there that, you know, what you want wants you. So I would say when we got back from that wedding, you were talking about Brennan. He actually reminded me of this. The only way I could describe it to him was when I met you two, Brennan and Kyle, I knew like the second I met you guys, I'm like, those are going to be two of my best friends. I just knew it. Like you have people that you meet and you just click with them and you're like, yep, I know I'm going to be close with them. When I met Sammy, that was the first time in my life I'd ever felt like that with a girl. So I just knew, I'm like, I don't know what this means, but I know it's different than anything I've ever experienced before.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And again, I was like kind of scared too. I told Sammy, it's like, I didn't want to like get too ahead of myself because again, there was a chance that like something wouldn't work and we might not see each other again, you know? So just practically, it's like, you don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but it's cheesy. But I do think that both of us like genuinely, truly, like in all honesty, did know pretty much right away.
Wow. That's
But
awesome.
it still like took the time to build the relationship and
Right.
everything. So.
Awesome. Well, that concludes my question, guys. I just wanted to congratulate you both. You mean the world to me. I love you both. I was kind of nervous to get to the end of here, trying to keep it all together. I'm a pretty even-tempered guy, but just seeing how happy you two make each other, it's been a blessing for myself. Wish you both nothing but the best. Seriously, I can't wait to celebrate with you both. Yeah, I just love you guys. So I'm going to keep it there before anything happens. Guys, thank you for watching the Men of the Kingdom podcast. Thank you both for being on the show here. I really hope you got value out of it. And I just want to encourage you that no matter where you're at in life, in singleness, maybe you're out of a relationship, there's someone out there for you. God has a plan for you. Go to him first, and yeah, all things will work out. So I thank you guys again for coming on here, guys. Until the next episode, keep advancing the kingdom. We'll see you next time.